I am recording this, so that's just your full disclosure.
Hang on, before you do
that. He's all set. You look official, man. You got the whiteboard behind you, covered with all kinds of good stuff. And
that's actually my CRM. I say forget all these Salesforce. And,
this is the low-tech solution for the IT guy.
You know, it's visible and it's right in my face all the time. I still use the other stuff, but this is what I refer to.
You know, I had the opportunity last summer to work with a client, and I went to their office about 4 days a week, and they had a whiteboard that was at least that big, if not bigger, in everybody's office. And if I was trying to figure something out, I would just write the question, and then by the end of the day, someone will have poked their head in and maybe written a possible answer to the question on the whiteboard, and it was pretty funny.
It really is effective because, in terms of prospecting and finding new accounts, it's always about being top of mind.
Right.
When it comes to lead generation, and these accounts are recent activity, things we've met on in the last 60, 90 days, and they stay top of mind. And we also have a lot of vendors that come through, right? And whether they're trying to solicit some type of referral partnership or just do some networking and things like that. Sometimes they'll look up on the board and say, "Hey, I've got a relationship there," or "One of my sales reps is working that account. How can we collaborate?" And it's just, again, we use all the sophisticated CRM tools and so forth, but this is something that it just helps it to stay top of mind and fresh in our memories.
I dig it. So, folks, Success Chargers, we're here today with Jason Wright, and Jason is with a company called All Covered, which is part of the Konica Minolta empire, right?
That's correct. Newly coined.
Newly coined. I like that. So, is the name All Covered? I know you guys have had a recent change. We used to work together. I say work together. I was working for a client of yours, and our paths just kept crossing over time. And you were with a company under its former name, which if you're watching this live, you'll see that listed as the Twitter handle that goes with Texas Group. It's the same guy, same company, but you guys are now part of the Konica Minolta family, part of something called All Covered. What can you tell us about the business?
So the business is as far as All Covered, we're a nationwide managed IT services provider, so primarily focused in the infrastructure space, dealing with help desk, server and network monitoring, troubleshooting support services, data center, cloud, business continuity. So we, if you look at your traditional IT pyramid, at the bottom, you've got infrastructure services, which entail hardware, storage, data center, secure connectivity. We cover that. We did cover that as Texas Group with the merger into All Covered, and consequently the Konica Minolta IT services portfolio. That also opens us up to more vertical market specific service offerings. So we have a healthcare practice. We have a financial services practice that covers the banking, finance, private equity, investment banks. We also have a retail practice that focuses on PCI compliance and things of that nature. So we also have application development group. So SharePoint type services, Microsoft in terms of Dynamics, Great Plains, and some of those. Those were offerings we didn't have before in the portfolio with Texas Group. They're high skill set requirements, and we now have those services available to us that we can go to market with both locally and nationally here as part of All Covered. So that put us into that middle tier as well on the IT pyramid, which is applications and application development. Of course, the top of that tier is, or that triangle, is strategy and consulting, and we certainly do that on a day-to-day basis with our clients, but it's not really a service that we bill for. So As Texas Group, we were a regionally focused, Houston-based managed services provider. We had a very successful run, had grown significantly over the years, but you get to a certain point where you somewhat plateau in the business. For us, those inflection points were at $1 million, $3 million, $5 million, and so on and so forth. And this last time around, we've been raising money to possibly look to acquire some other local partners that would put us in maybe that $20 million top line earnings space. And at the same time, there's a lot of consolidation going on in our industry, and All Covered is a national player who had made 18 acquisitions prior to us, and basically came in, said they looked at 55 other companies in Houston, said you guys are the best at what you do. You most closely align with our go-to-market strategy and our portfolio of offerings. And so they made a rather substantial offer. Companies our size typically will sell for, a multiple in the 3 to 5 space, 3 to 5 times earnings. And so they made an offer that was,
Pretty sweet.
Yeah, pretty sweet. A lot better than that. So
we won't disclose the terms of your deal. We'll just say it was a good one.
Great.
Tell us about what you're in the sales role and account management role. Tell us a little bit about what you do within the company, so our listeners kind of know what your perspective will be as we chat today.
Yeah, so I currently have at Texas, I was our vice president of sales and marketing. In this new company, we're in a period of transition. Currently, I have a territory sales manager role, so I independently carry a book of business, and then I manage a team of technology consultants here in Houston, and have responsibility for the quota of the city or of the region. And then my role will change somewhere between January and March, where I'll take over effectively what is a GM role. They call it a market director. We have 25 markets across the U.S., so there's 25 market directors. So I'll basically have both sales and operational responsibility for the Houston, Austin, San Antonio region starting next year. But right now, I've just got my nose to the grindstone. We're generating a lot of activity, and I'm helping to train and build up a team so that when I transition to that role, there's not a vacuum left in my absence, because I did account for individually a lot of the revenue over the years in terms of bookings.
Sure. And, you and I had met prior to our connection through Texas, or the company that has evolved to where you are today. We had met prior when I was doing some leadership development training and work here in the Houston area, and we just sort of connected and stayed in touch. And and the road was was great to allow us the chance to work together from a different perspective. And then here I am again, primarily focused once again doing leadership development consulting. And I was excited to see the opportunities that have unfolded for you, because certainly you're somebody that, having known you for several years, you're a guy of integrity, a guy that always shoots it straight, says, look, I'll tell you what I know, I'll tell you what I don't know. If you're not the right guy, you're always great at saying, let me get you connected with the guy who is, or the gal who is, right? And let me just ask you that. We talk a lot about connection on this show. How does the connection in the relationships that you build with your clients and prospects, how's that different than what some of the other players have done that's been in your experience?
Well, it's really how we grew the business, Scott. So we, when I break out in terms of lead generation, where we generate leads from, I mean, you have your traditional online marketing through your website, SEO efforts, social media. You have event lead marketing, doing lunch and learns, thought leadership, trade show type expos. You may have some outbound campaigns, whether they be direct mail marketing campaigns or outbound email campaigns. All of those, we use a combination of everything. It's almost a guerrilla marketing approach where we're hitting our prospective client base from all angles. But far more effective than anything else we've ever done has been networking. And we really, early on, when the company was launched, we embedded ourselves in the local networking scene. So, every single Chamber of Commerce event we were at, every single Greater Houston Partnership event we were at, we sat on boards to this day, still do sit on boards for the Entrepreneurship Institute, their chapter here in Houston. We belong to the Houston CEO Network Partners. We belong to Business Resource Group. So, it goes on and on and on. And then we looked at more vertical specific networking groups, things like, the oil and gas industry has a number of networking associations. Marine Technology Society is a strong one here that puts on a lot of events and draws in specific people in offshore marine drilling and those type offshore oil drilling exploration activities. So basically, we just decided that we were going to be highly visible, high touch in all these networking organizations. And over the years, by doing that, you effectively extend the reach of your business development community, because these people get to know you every week, sometimes multiple times a week. They hear about your company. They hear your elevator pitch when you do your introductions, and they get to know you. It gets ingrained in their mind. And for some people, they start sending you leads right away. You develop close relationships with people that you bond with, and you meet up for one-on-one meetings, and you'll have coffee, and you'll do some account mapping and strategize on accounts you can attack together. And then there's other folks that may not think about you for a year or two, but they come in contact with somebody who says, you know what, I need an IT service provider. Who do you know? And in that moment, because they've known you, they've seen you 100 times over the past 2 years, your name pops up in their mind, and there you go. You have a referral that might lead to an account that generates several hundred thousand dollars worth of business for you. So the other thing it does is, from a brand standpoint, is it gets your name out there. Even if you don't necessarily have people who are effectively bringing you into accounts or referring business to you, they still know who you are, and it just helps to grow your brand organically in a way that doesn't cost a whole lot of money outside of the membership fees of those organizations. So, what I can tell you is, with this new company, we were their largest. They've made 20 acquisitions. We were the largest acquisition to date, and right out of the gate, we were the number one market out of 25 markets nationally for recurring revenue services, which everybody's in my business is striving to achieve a high run rate, because that's where the profit is derived. And, we got that, Scott, through old school, hardcore, kick-ass, grassroots networking, and just being visible in the marketplace and being repetitive, always showing up in these groups, and just getting the word out about who we are and what we do.
Man, that's so helpful to hear. I'm getting an echo. I think I'm hearing myself coming back through your speaker. When we think about these different, there's networking groups, and then there's business partners, which really would be kind of two different channels. And I'm hearing you talk a lot about, early on we talked about you had resources that weren't available that are available today now that you're part of a larger group. And that, I think, would be that where you may have counted on some true business partners, where you're actively engaged on a project with other vendors. They may be, subbing a piece of their expertise to you under your company, and providing some expertise in those ways. But I want to talk for a minute about networking, because a lot of the listeners of this show are folks who, some may be in a traditional job where they're in a sales role, they're developing, a new business, a new arm, trying to get the word out. But some of these folks too are, they're entrepreneurs, they're bootstrapping their own business. And it's really easy to spend too much time just networking and not enough time actually doing work. When I hear you say you attribute so much of the success to the fact that you deliberately got out there, let me ask this kind of a two-part question. Number one, how do you find the right balance between, I'm going to a networking meeting, boss, and actually, meeting with clients and prospects and trying to dig a little deeper to establish a relationship. The second piece of that is, I forgot the second part of the question. So let's answer the first part. Then I'll come back with the second
problem. One. So it'll come back to you. Don't worry, Scott. You've been doing these podcasts, so you're.
I can edit. That's good.
So we kind of break. When you look at just a referral network in general, you can kind of break it down into subcategories. One being referral marketing in itself. Two being actual networking, and then three, what I call strategic alliances, right? So we try to do structure very deliberate actions for each one of those channels or each one of those avenues. Let's take referrals, for instance.
Okay.
So there's an actual part of our sales process where once we've sold a customer and we've gone out to do the initial kickoff discussion with them and introduce the team that's going to be supporting them through the onboarding, there's an actual point in the process where we let them know that assuming we deliver on the deliverables, right, and we achieve a good score through the implementation and so forth, we're going to come back, Mr. Customer, and ask you for a recommendation or a referral to other people within your network who may be able to help us out. So it's kind of like the old, what's the organization that does all the speaking? You know who it is.
Like Toastmasters?
Toastmasters, right? So their whole concept is tell them what you're going to tell them what you told them. We do a lot of that. We apply that in our sales process, but even in the networking, we go into the customer and we say, you're a newly coined customer for us. We're going to tell you that we're going to come back and ask for a referral, assuming we do a good job for you. Then we're going to do a good job for you. And after that, we're going to come back and ask that you go ahead and introduce us to another customer. So that's kind of the referral piece. Every organization should have a defined strategy around referral networking. There should be a mechanism in place, whether it's some kind of incentive or it be a KPI that enforces or basically incentivize the sales team to go back and ask for referrals. It blows my mind how often salespeople are afraid to actually ask a customer they've already won business from, for recommendations or contacts for other people in their network. That's the lowest cost of sales, and It's the easiest thing to do. And most of those people don't think that way, so they're not going to give you that recommendation. So that's referrals. In terms of networking, I already talked a lot about that. You just have to be seen. You have to be visible. You mentioned how do you kind of weigh that with salespeople and understand that they're really doing that versus maybe just freeloading and spending time out of the office, for instance. I mean, at the end of the day, their activity is going to dictate whether they're truly out there pounding the pavements or not, right? Some people, when it comes to networking, it's not just about showing up at the events, but you really have to know how to work a room. You have to be fearless. You have to be willing to go up where people are already huddled up together and just deliberately interject and say, hi, my name's Jason Wright. I'm with All Covered. Here's what we do, and here's how we bring value to the marketplace, and be able to knock that out in about 10 seconds and just be engaging. There's a lot of people, some of my sales reps in the past that I've taken on networking events, and they just they're nervous. They kind of hide over in a corner. They might see one person they know and stick to that person the whole time and down 3 or 4 margaritas while they're there. And that accomplishes nothing, and we waste our money.
Well, it's not nothing, but, it's not productive.
Catch a buzz, but they don't catch any prospects, I'll tell you that.
You always find somebody to catch your bar bill, but you can never find somebody to sell something to.
That's right. And we're not there to meet a happy hour quota or some kind of
the 2-drink minimum, whatever it takes.
Yeah, the minimum for the event. The last part, strategic alliances, and that's where you look for true, I think, business development channels or opportunities to partner with companies who maybe have a similar customer base, who have a similar product offering or a similar go-to-market strategy as you, and you can kind of ride on their coattails and cross-sell or upsell into the customers that they already have, or that they're going after. In our case, we found a local data center company. So we outsourced our own cloud to a data center, to a company who's already world-class in terms of facilities, power, cooling, management, right? And therefore, basically, we brokered an agreement with them to be able to sell co-location and rack space within their facility, and they offered us wholesale rates. We agreed to a minimum, if you will, in terms of how much we'd sell on that. And basically, they only wanted larger clients, enterprise clients, but we ourselves were an enterprise client considering how many racks we took up, but we could sublease space to customers within our space. So we could effectively bring people into their data center that normally wouldn't have gotten any attention from this company and allow us to add 30 and 40% margins onto their product. And it was a very fixed cost type of arrangement. It wasn't a variable cost arrangement like most managed services. So it was real. In other words, it was very easy business to take. We'd simply get paid month in, month out, and not really have to do any work on any of that kind of work. So I always try to encourage people to look for those strategic business alliances, or business development channels. One other that we had a speaker not too long ago in our Vistage meeting that came in, and they were a company, I think, based in Austin, and they sold, they basically sold, what do you call it, where you, storage space, right? Like a U-Haul place where you go and.
Oh, yeah. Like a self-storage kind of a place?
Yeah, a storage place. And so the storage place basically brokered a deal with Penske, who had moving trucks, right? Penske relocation trucks. They were a competitor to U-Haul. And so every time you'd call into Penske's call center to order a truck, the call center agents would automatically offer you a discounted rate on storage. And so by doing that, they increased their top line revenue, I think something like 300% in that first year that they had that partnership. And Penske at the same time inherited a lot of additional business on the back end from people when they had to move out of those storage units and move into a house. So it's just look for the creative things. I mean, there are a lot of those kind of deals that don't make sense, but there are a few good ones that really do make sense. And from a brand awareness standpoint, it makes sense for you to align to those. And I just encourage people in their business to be unique and look for those avenues, because those are the things that could really differentiate you.
So I hear a couple of things. Number one is get out there, get in the conversation, have some talking points, know what your company's about, know how you help people, know kind of where the ditches are, right? So, we can go up to this point, we can go down to this point. Outside of that, you're not the ideal client. So often we hear companies that, particularly, young upstarts, right? They want to say, "Oh, I can help everybody." Well, you may know theoretically how to do that, but are you really doing them a service? If they're a much bigger client than you're prepared to take on today, and you don't have the bandwidth, you can get yourself into a lot of trouble quick. And that may be some of our listeners that are folks that either they today work in another company, or they're already working on their own, but they have worked for a much larger company before. And they know how to do it, but can they do it? If they don't have the right partnerships in place, that can be tricky. Right. And the second thing I heard you say, which I think plays back to another reason to go be involved in various networking groups and efforts on purpose. And that is to engage and listen to the stories that people are using in other industries, so that you can figure out what that might look like in your business. For example, you talked about partnering with a data center to sell capacity and rack space. There's a huge metaphor between that and, hey, I own a fleet of trucks, you own a bunch of space people can put stuff. Why don't we co-market each other's products?
Right.
And when you hear that, you go, oh, I see the parallel. And you'll see that in your business as you watch these other stories unfold. And you'll say, well, tell me how you partnered with them. Who's your biggest strategic partner? And let them tell you the story. Even if it's not your industry, it may very well be a business lesson that you could apply by just changing the context of who the players are.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you said a couple of things that were really interesting there, Scott. So one was you talked about new startup companies that come in and obviously very quickly you want to generate revenue and get cash flow going. So you're kind of willing to take the shotgun blast approach, which is I'll sell anything to anybody who will buy.
Right.
And, I wouldn't say that's always a bad idea, but if nothing else, it should be nothing more than a short-term strategy to get cash flow going. And then you should really get focused. I mean, we've always bought in to Jim Collins. If you're familiar with Jim Collins, Good to Great, great voice. He's written a number of great business books, and I always liked his books because it was all based on data analytics from a bunch of Stanford MBAs, right? It wasn't like his own hypotheses and his own thoughts or opinions. But in Good to Great, he talks a lot about the hedgehog concept, right? Finding that economic engine. What is that thing that you can make a lot of money on? What is that thing that you can derive high margin, high value from, right? So you find a business in a trending marketplace, something that's not necessarily highly competitive. But on top of that, it's all about being, not trying to be all things to all people, but rather being really good at one thing, right? He also talks about getting the right people in the right seats on the bus, but that's a conversation for a whole nother day because culture is its own podcast, maybe its own series, right?
I think so.
But for a startup, it's a good idea to find something that, as he calls it, you could be the best in the world at. What kind of service can you be the best in the world at, and go to market and be strong at that? And don't always necessarily take the high volume approach, but maybe more high value, high profit, right? So you may not grow as much in terms of top line, but you create a really nice business when your bottom line is really high and profitable. And so, one of the things we did, we were at a point about 5 years ago. I'd been in the business for a number of years. As a startup, we had brought a really unique model to market in the MSP space. We were the first guys that really came to market and said, forget the time and materials, call somebody when you have a problem. We're going to bring you a fixed fee, unlimited support type of arrangement, which combines the proactive side of IT support, and we're going to sell it to you on a contract basis, and you're going to pay a fixed fee per month. I mean, nobody was doing that when we came to market. Now it's the only way that you can even get IT services. So it was very innovative, and it allowed for us to grow very quickly. We all had enterprise backgrounds. We'd come from big companies, and so that was our story to the market, which is another key point I tell listeners is, it's kind of like Simon Sinek's Golden Circle philosophy. If you've ever seen his 18-minute YouTube video, but it's really smart. He talks about Apple and Nike and Gatorade and all these innovative companies and how they really start from the inside. He draws 3 circles, and the inside is why you do what you do. The middle is what you do, and the outside is how you do it. And most tactical people start on the outside, and they talk about what they do and how they do it, whereas companies like Apple, Nike, and Gatorade start on the inside and said, here's why we do what we do. Here's how we change the world. We took that same approach, and we developed our story. And it was, look, we've all worked at big companies, and we want to bring those same best practices, same methodologies, and we want to apply it to your business. And we've bundled it and packaged it for small, mid-market customers. And they bought into that philosophy. So you have an innovative concept. You have a good story behind it, which really speaks to the why we do what we do. And we grew very fast. But the problem is your competitors catch on very quickly, and they emulate and copy what you do. So we rebranded about 5 years ago. And that was a decision, going back to my initial point, that we had to make. It was all about, do we want to go high revenue, commodity type of service, low value, and try and take this out nationally, or do we want to be more high value, high profit, and not necessarily be interested in market share? And we chose the latter. So we did a number of things. We redesigned our website, and we put a really strong web dominant strategy in place to kind of pick up the low hanging fruit out on the websites. We also focused on through our marketing thought leadership. So we produced a lot of good content. We put on events that didn't necessarily brag about us, but spoke to issues in the industry, things businesses were struggling with. We brought in industry experts and things like that. So that worked very well. But I think the single biggest impact we had was on our sales process. And it was that we stopped focusing on differentiating or trying to differentiate through products and services and bringing new products and services to market. That's what all our competitors would do. Every time they felt like they needed more revenue, they'd go find a new product to sell or a new service to bring to market, which only requires more operational back end to support it, more training to the sales team. It's got a high cost of entry. It takes a lot. So we said, we're going to basically go out to our customers first, and we're going to ask them, what do they like about our company? What do they not like about our company? Where do they pit our strengths versus weaknesses versus where do we pit our strengths versus weaknesses? And what do they, basically just a deep dive assessment. And we did that with all that data. We repackaged our offerings. We basically consolidated 5 offerings into one, and we took that hedgehog concept and we said, we're going to be the best in the world at this. This is what we're going to bring to market. If you're not looking for this product, then we're not your vendor. But we put so much into that offering that we threw everything in the kitchen sink in. And we created a playbook, a sales playbook that was.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that because you were telling me just the other day when we were setting up for this interview, this has been something that I'm looking forward to you sharing that, because you've said that this has gotten the attention of a lot of the other sales leaders throughout the new larger group, the all covered group that you're a part of. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so basically, the whole idea was some of the feedback we got from our customers, in a nutshell, was they didn't know what to expect in an engagement with us, right? They knew they could call us when their computer broke or their server went down and we'd come out and troubleshoot it. But in terms of any value and how that enabled their business to grow, they had no idea. And also, we didn't necessarily report to them on the work that we were doing in the form of metrics, performance metrics, right? So they didn't actually know what they were paying for. So, at the end of the day, we basically said, we're going to get really good at defining what does success look like for our customers. So we're going to identify KPIs up front early in the engagement, which are based on their pain points, their challenges, their barriers to entry in whatever markets they're trying to pursue. And then we're going to put a system in place that basically measures our performance against those metrics, right? And we'll augment that with quarterly business reviews. We'll augment that with deep dive assessment and technology business roadmap plans. We'll even go so far as to do the financial analysis. We'll put together financial impact analysis modeling, because if you think about a lot of small and mid-market companies, they're not as sophisticated enough, at least from an IT standpoint, to know what they should be buying and know the difference between a CapEx model and an OpEx model, and when you factor in depreciation in their annualized IT expenses. So we would go in and paint that picture for them. And ultimately, what we were doing was we were defining what the touch points were all throughout the outsourcing engagement. And I think that was crucial in our business, because if you're going to be in the outsourcing business, the term outsourcing in itself, it kind of has a negative connotation. But again, if you can define, here's what success looks like, here's how we're going to measure it, and here are all the touch points you can expect from us all along the way. You surround them with a good team. In our case, we called it the assurance team, right? The defined resources within that group that supported the account. And it was amazing, Scott. I mean, we launched this, like I said, 4.5, 5 years ago. At the time, our all-in seat price, which is how our industry is measured in terms of efficiency and profitability, at least in our go-to-market strategies, we were at $75 per user per month. And we had immediately introduced this at $95 per user per month. So pretty big jump right out of the gate. We had so much success with it that a few months later, We bumped it up to $99 per user per month. And then a year later, we went to 110 per user per month. And a year later, we went to 125. So while the market is being highly commoditized and their prices are being driven down, and all they can do is compete on price, we were going against the grain, kind of like salmon swimming up the stream, and we were positioning ourselves as high value. I wouldn't say a niche player, but a premium reseller of those type of services, and our prices were going up, and the results speak for themselves. We went from a net earnings percentage of sales of around 10% to the last quarter before we sold at 24%. So a business that's retaining 25% of its gross operating income is about as high as you can get. I mean, some finance businesses climb up into that 30% range, but you don't do much better than 25%. We've gotten there. We've hit so many other metrics, drove down our cost of sales, drove down our SG&A numbers, increased our gross margins from 40% up to 55%. So the last thing I'll say on it is, if you've ever heard of the power of tens model, that's the way we approach this thing. We basically said, if we can improve, in other words, if we can make incremental changes all across the business, instead of trying to just focus on sales, then we can have a bigger net gain or net impact on the business. So we said, if we can improve sales, if we can grow sales by 10%, if we can increase operational efficiency by 10%, if we can reduce our customer churn by 10%, if we can reduce our employee turnover by 10%, then effectively we could have a net gain of 40%. In that first year we did this, took about a year to put in place. That first year, I have a picture holding a trophy at a local event here that said we grew by 44%. So,
wow,
some of that's luck, but we were spot on. I mean, it was a really cool experience, and I've had the good fortune of speaking nationally about this at some different IT conferences, and everybody has the same challenge when it comes to sales. How do we grow sales? How do we leverage social media and thought leadership marketing? It's so hard to find resources. And what we found is we could incrementally sell a lot more with a lot less in terms of our sales team. Like right now at the new company, All Covered, we've been number one in sales 4 months in a row. I have the highest quota of 25 markets in the nation. I have the smallest sales team of just about any market in the nation. So you can be much more efficient when you look at the return on your SG&A and your cost of sales by just focusing on these various aspects in your business.
There's so much as you unpack what you just said, right? Because
it's a lot to digest.
It is. There's a lot of layers. So
I'm vomiting on you right now. But
yeah. Well, the good thing about this being a podcast is you can listen to it again and again and again.
Yeah.
And at different times you'll hear different things, because I've worked with organizations that all they seem to be able to see is, I've got to get that top line revenue number. That's my magic beans. That's what's going to fix everything. And I'm like, no, that's one component and it's important. But what if you could pick up some efficiencies in these 19 other places? And you just gave us a real example that said, you guys said, look, if we want to be the best overall, let's move the needle in these critical areas of the business. Yeah. These are all metrics that we can improve on. We're not going to be better overnight. And so many times people go to a marketing seminar, they go to an industry event, they go to a training seminar. They may bring in a consultant like me that sits down and they go, how do I get my sales up? And I'm like, it's bigger than that.
Yeah.
It's an entire holistic approach. It's being able to understand the numbers, the industry, what's going on, not being afraid to step out and take a chance. I would imagine if you were to go back and really break down every move you made that year, you enjoyed the 44% increase in growth. You look at that and you go, yeah, but boy, we really screwed a couple of things up in there.
Yeah.
And on the short term, they probably look that way, right?
Yeah.
And the beauty of it is, you've got to be okay. my former career in the financial services business, one of the most glorious days I ever had was when I had to let one of my bigger clients go because they just flat wouldn't take my advice. And I thought, why are you paying me for my advice when you won't take it?
Right.
And I said, this is not a client for me. And they were had been such a time suck, right?
Yeah.
They had taken so much energy away from what I'm doing. And sometimes you have to do that. You've got to, my friends that I know that work in the fundraising arena for nonprofits and education and other places. They say sometimes, you have a donor that just wears you out so bad, you just let them go. They call it bless and release.
Yeah.
They're like, you know what, we appreciate you. Thank you for all your support. Good luck to you, but stop calling me. Stop. You can't be involved in everything. So let me kind of do a couple of things here. Towards the end of our of interviews, I jump into a little segment that I like to call the lightning round.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to throw a few phrases at you. Yeah, right. We're going to get you going. If you're watching the video feed, you just saw he's throwing punches at me. But
Yeah.
I'm going to throw a couple things at you real quick.
Okay.
And just try to get a little input from you. Some of it's fun, some of it's serious, but it's all kind of there. So let me ask you this. Tell me what this word means to you, and we'll just keep, these are short, quick, what comes top of mind, 15, 20-second answers. What does it mean to you when you hear the word connection?
Emotional is a word that comes to me. Nothing's changed since the beginning of time, since caveman. People buy from people they like. That never changes. So from a lot of the stuff I talked about with networking and stuff, it always behooves me to get in front of people, right? I don't want to sell over the phone. I don't want to sell over WebExes. That's why networking and all those things work for me. If I'm in front of the customer, I'm selling, I'm closing.
That's awesome. Tell me what this means to you. What does happiness mean to you?
Oh, for me personally, happiness is grounded in my faith in Jesus Christ. I mean, that's my one true purpose. Being a good husband and being a father. I always say if you're, in my opinion, if you have faith and you're connected to Christ, then everything else flows from that. All those other things aren't priorities. It's just a personal relationship with Christ, and then your work life, your personal life, your family life, being a good husband, everything else, just it all falls in line as long as that connection is in place and it's invested in.
All right, one more quick hit here. What does success mean to you?
I think success to me ultimately means how successful have I helped other people to become. At the end of the day, I like making a lot of money and I like growing businesses and I get a lot of satisfaction out of that. But what drives me more than anything is ultimately growing a business so that we can employ more and more people. I see it as a purpose, and I try to instill that in my staff. Ultimately, I think everything should be purpose driven. That's why soldiers in the military are always so united, have such good communication, have such good teamwork, because they're all united around a purpose that is derived from life or death. Now, in our case, in the corporate world, it's not physically a life or death situation, but ultimately, if we fail our customers, they could go out of business. And I try to instill that so that ultimately, our growth is apparent and it helps us to employ more people. And I think that's what success is. The more people you can employ, the more families you support, it has a ripple effect throughout their lives and their families.
Love it. All right, so here's a fun question for you, and then one last serious one before we go. But you're stranded on an island. You're going to be there for the rest of your days, all by yourself. But through the magic of some crazy technology run by coconuts and sand, you can have with you one album of music that's with you. What is the album that you've got with you that you can listen to for the rest of your days on this island?
Oh man, that's not even a hard one for me. It's so easy. I'm a a 90s alternative guy. I love all types of music. Don't get me wrong. Classic
Sure.
rock, some R&B and hip hop. I'm a huge fan of country, and specifically Texas country music. But I always come back to the same thing, and I think if you know me, Scott, I'm always amped up. I'm always hard charging. I'm kind of in your face, right? So I'm a rage against the machine kind of guy. I don't
Nice.
necessarily like their politics, but I freaking love their music, and it gets me amped up. If I got to go out to a sales appointment or I'm getting ready to kick off a meeting with my sales team, all I got to do is listen to a little Bulls on Parade, and I am ready to go.
You wake up in the morning with your pocket full of shells. Yeah, you're ready to go. I love it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, so one last question for you, and then before we wrap it up, what advice would you give 30-year-old Jason?
That's not that long ago. Maybe we should go to 20-year-old. Hell,
All right, let's go to 20-year-old. 20-year-old Jason, what do you tell yourself?
Well, going to an earlier statement, God has blessed me so much with a wonderful wife who really helped ground me and helped me to steer me in the right direction. I mean, advice I would give to the 20-year-old, because I think my life since 20 years old, quite frankly, couldn't have gone any better. Maybe 15 to 20 was rough, but I would say when times get tough and the crap hits the fan at your job, don't just leave, because you're always, especially when you're in a sales or business development role, you're always starting over at the next place. But stay put, grind it out through tough times, because your employer will see you as loyal. It'll open you up for opportunities of upward mobility. And if you can just get through sometimes the tough times, here we are, it's 9/11. Everybody remembers what happened to the financial markets after 9/11, or the financial collapse of 2008. Sometimes people get a little thin in the wallets and they want to jump. Just stay put. If you have a bad boss, work through it. Don't be so quick to leave. The grass isn't always greener on the other side. Stick it through, and it'll pay dividends, I promise you. And I wish I could have gone back and told myself that 15 years ago.
Well, I think that's good advice to kind of leave it on today. That in the interest of being a good husband and a good dad, we're coming up on the time of the day where I'm going to go pick my kiddo up from daycare, and we're headed to where she does gymnastics for an open gymnastics night. So I want to go play in the foam pit with my daughter. So we're gonna go head off and do that, man.
Watch out for the needles. I hear there's needles in there.
No, don't tell me that. Don't tell me, because I'm going head first, man. I'm diving right in. She gets to do that every Saturday, but I don't get to see it all the time. So I'm going for Friday night play night at the gym with my daughter. It's going to be fun. Jason, it's good to see you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Look forward to doing it again.